Hello, hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. I'm Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And this is going to be a nice little fun chat. We're going to talk about like timeline shifts. So it's kind of strange talking about this because I know everybody doesn't get it. You know what I mean? Like what are you talking about? Like, just stay with me. It's the subtle, the spiritual, the shifts. So like reality glitches or what I'm calling a spiritual U-turn. So just stay with me. I have my notes because this is kind of trippy to talk about. But have you ever felt like something shifted in your life that didn't make logical sense? Okay. So like reality didn't break, but it bent. So I'll be sharing some stuff from my own experience and giving examples and stuff like that. So, chime in. Feel free to chime in, please. Um, but we're going to be talking about all about those types of moments and why they happen and how you can even recognize them, and how to intentionally move forward when things don't quite feel the same. So I'm not talking sci-fi. Sci-fi time travel. It's more about the energetic timelines you're walking every day. So if this is a new concept to you, buckle up. All right. So timelines are paths of potential. The version of your life where you accepted that job, the one where you said no to that relationship, the one where you healed your heart and stepped into your power. And sometimes you shift, you pivot without a warning, or sometimes because something inside you kind of snapped awake. So it's not about necessarily predicting the future, it's about recognizing the version of reality you're in and deciding if it still fits. Hopefully that makes sense. So, what triggers a timeline shift? Major life events, loss, joy, trauma, healing. I would big moves also. I didn't have that on my list, but a big move. Me moving here was a huge timeline shift. And me getting interrupted when my phone is anyway. Yeah, moving here was a huge timeline shift. My healing journey was a huge timeline shift. My reality shifted dramatically because of that. I got more of that. So what triggers a timeline shift? That's what we're talking about. Moments of decision, like if you're quitting, you're staying, you're saying yes or no to something. These are triggers. Big if you if you've experienced that, if you live long enough, you know this. Spiritual breakthroughs. So especially when you reclaim forgotten parts of yourself. I'm not saying men don't experience this, but I know from my experience working, talking, dealing with women on a more intimate level, for sure. Sort of awakening, connecting to feminine divinity um, is huge for a timeline shift. Deep clarity or identity changes. You may have always saw yourself one way. Oh my goodness, I'm just like getting calls after call. Um, yeah, but deep clarity, identity changes, who you always kind of seeing yourself as may not be, you don't feel the same way anymore. You're kind of waking up to that. Your identity altogether, you might have always saw yourself as a mother or a worker. And then one day, the role that you always define for yourself has changed. For the mother, the kids grow up and they become adults. For the worker, sometimes if you get a late job, laid off, triggers. But even mundane changes like rearranging your space or decluttering something symbolic. So if I'm a big believer in that. Like if I really need a shift, if I'm trying to instigate the shift, I will change the room around. I'll change my furniture around. We probably know about that. If you've ever been the type of kid, it's like late at night and you start moving furniture around in your bedroom because I don't know, you just need this shift. It just in your world just seems right. Am I the only one that used to do that? I used to also would do that sometimes. My mom would come home and I would rearrange the living room. Is this a unique experience? Is that just me? Okay, anyway, moving on. My question outside of that, are you that type of kid that I was teenager that would like unilaterally make a decision to move? She would sometimes move it back. My mom wasn't necessarily cool with it, but she would, let me flex my creativity a little bit. Doesn't mean she kept it. But anyway, my question is, have you ever felt like you stepped into a different version of your life, but couldn't explain how or why? So let me know if you're catching this on the replay. Let me know in the comments, and let's talk about it. We can engage on the back end if you're not catching me live. But I am curious. I mean, ever like I said, from being a teenager, I felt like my life. I had a different, at least when life my things changed drastically once I decided to like change furniture around. But to the bigger things like moving across the country, that definitely triggered a timeline shift. And I will get more into that because I haven't shared more about that experience. Which leads me into glitches, loops, and signs. Glitches. You might notice these signs when a shift is happening. So we talked about triggers, and we're going to talk about when the shift is happening. So like repeating numbers, a lot of us get that we talked about that before in other videos. So like seeing 1111, 222, like that. Deja vu moments. So like especially in new places, definitely experiencing that out here. Honestly, people acting out of character, items going missing, then reappearing. Dreams that feel like memories. That's one. And sudden disinterest in something that you were obsessed with. Um, I experienced that here too. Sometimes these aren't just weird. They may be markers. Well, I think they are markers because you're kind of in between timelines or being pulled into a new one. So, spiritual U turns. Or like those frustrating moments when you feel like you're back where you started, but you're not. You're redoing something this time with more awareness. Um, that's sort of really important. That's where I kind of want to pause and really kind of share a little bit about me, and my experience, my story. So again, I'm talking right now about like spiritual U-turns. I think a lot of us can relate to that when you find yourself, which recently I've been there myself, where it's like the things that I worked on, I did shadow work on, I did a lot of ritual, intentional spell work on. And it's like, why am I back dealing with this issue again? I thought I would get I thought I did the work. Why is this happening again? Why am I having to redo it? And I really thought about this. And if you've been, it doesn't matter the situation or the issue. So let's say it's you got laid off and you got a job, you did the spell work, it worked. It's a better job, it's a better experience, you make more money, and you thought you were on everything was is solid, right? And then boom, they do another company layoff. And you're like, what I thought I already went through this. Why am I going through this again? And you're back to square one. Or let's take it from a job, just finances. You cleaned everything up, you got your credit together, you were doing well, and then there's this situation that occurs where you're not in a position to maintain what you've done, pay your bills on time, which is unraveling your credit and all that sort of stuff. Or it's a situation where you put yourself out there on social media and you found out how the algorithm works, and you did all the things, and you know, you had that viral video, and then nothing. And you're like, what? You did the work, you put the energy out there, and that video went viral, but then there was nothing else, and you're really trying. And you're kind of like, why am I back here? And this could be in relationships as well, romantic relationships. Um, okay, you understood what happened. Why do I keep attracting? Why am I right back where I seem like I started? I thought I did the work, I did the shadow work, I did all the things. Um, yeah, you are redoing it again. Um, there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. The only thing we have as a guarantee is death at this time. Um, I don't know where things are going to go, but right now that's the guarantee. So I need people to remember that, even down to protection work. I know there are people who feel like literally nothing bad will happen to them because they're so protected. And I don't think that's a good way to kind of look at magical work. I don't think that's a good way to look at any kind of spiritual work, like, oh, nothing's going to happen to you. You have this shield up. Now, the best way I could explain is you did the work, you put up the guard based on what you believe to be a threat to you, whether it's metaphysically speaking or physically speaking. You can only think of the possibilities that you know. So if that's the case, it's kind of like setting up uh like with computers and software, and like you, or even a vaccination. I'm just trying to think, like, the thing you don't know can get through is my point, if that makes any sense. So you can only go with the combinations that you know, and you create the spell based on that. You didn't know about this one, so maybe that one can come through. I'm just trying to give an example that is kind of a little bit more logical on how every mm, there are no guarantees except death. I'm just going to end it there. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining that, but there's no guarantees in our life except for death. That we know to be true. So sometimes you are seemingly redoing it again. You're not in the exact same spot you were before, because before you had less knowledge. You didn't have the awareness that you have now. So you are not exactly where you started before. You are redoing, but you're in a different. You're on a different level now, dealing with a similar situation or possibly the same situation from before. It doesn't mean failure. Let me repeat that. It doesn't mean you failed. You haven't failed. That's life. That's the human experience. And there are so many other attributes and situations that you are not going to be able to control, because you don't even know to control it. You're not aware. You only have your awareness, and you rise to the occasion as these experiences come into your life. Um, you have the awareness of how you dealt with the situation before, so you can redo it. Yeah, you may be redoing something again. Aspects of your life, you may be back to looking for a job again, you may be back to looking for a relationship with someone who understands you and respects you, and genuinely wants to like and love you. You may be back in a situation where you're redoing your credit again for the 15th time, it seems like, in your lifespan, of okay, let me get back to trying to build the score back up again after it got knocked down because of some, I got sick and I got a hospital bill and I couldn't go to work, so I couldn't make those credit card payments on time, and my car payment got backed up, and so forth. You know what I mean? And you're back to doing that, but you have the awareness. More importantly, the timing, where before maybe you didn't understand it, now you do know. Um, I know someone who had a lot of life events happen. Boom, 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 boom. Everything from losing, their home, their car, and all that sort of stuff. And then they built it all back up again. It took some time, but they built it back up in something nicer, more than one vehicle, um, just for a new threat that they had not anticipated to shake that again. And they had to downsize, and then they did something like, and these, it happens. It happens. But here's the thing: they knew what to expect. Ideally, they didn't want to be in that situation again. Who does? You don't want to have to constantly be in rebuild mode. Um, I mean, we're watching people happen right now because of climate change. Me, the individual, I can only do so much. I can recycle. I can be mindful about where I'm shopping. If you don't want to do fast fashion and you don't want to, you know, the plastics and all that sort of stuff, and you don't have the aerosol, and you're trying to make personal decisions. Ultimately, it's out of my control. There are big companies doing it. I can do spell work to hopefully, I don't know, add empathy to a person, to care not only about the beings on the planet, but the planet itself. I'm one person. I can try. Honestly don't think that that's how my magic will work, where it will completely bend the will of, the board, the CEO, and all the other people all in cahoots, for these big major corporations. I can try, but that doesn't mean it's going to be successful. But yeah, I probably would have a better effective spell of causing an event in their life to make them maybe, but they might just quit that, the engine's going, unfortunately, like capitalism, all that. Like, I just think of it as a big machine, and it's running and it's going, and it's going to just keep going until, it just wears itself out. I'm beginning to wonder if there's other than us dismantling the machine, but I don't know. I think they got a backup. But anyway, moving on. Not to be pessimistic, I'm just being realistic about things. Uh, but because of that, a lot of us, I was gonna make it a bigger point. So like the weather and all that's happening right now, where we have flooding, we have people who already experienced that, and then it happened again. So it's like they didn't even get a chance to rebuild, and they're already experiencing the issue again. Like, if you're a practitioner, you're a witch, and you put up wards around your home and it's flooded out, and you're like, what the F? And it happens again. um yeah, the it's hard to explain that, other than we are having a human experience. To be a practitioner, to call yourself a witch, doesn't mean that you don't experience the human experience, that you're still human, you're still experiencing life just like everyone else. And sometimes spiritual U-turns are happening. We're just a little bit more aware. The advantage, to being a practitioner, to being a witch, is that you are aware. That's the advantage. It doesn't mean you don't experience it. You just have a better awareness. All right, so I want to talk about tools for timeline awareness. So instead of spells, let's talk about supportive tools and herbs that align with this energy. So I have a free printable, and it's just a really pretty page. I love the page that I created, and it's free, and I'm sharing it if you want to add it to your book of shadows. Um, so these are correspondences for timeline work. So bay leaf. Bay leaf is going to be good for clarity, release, and pivoting energy. So if we're talking about how to use any of this, this is up for you to decide. So you can just burn the bay leaf. You could put a sigil on it. You could keep the bay leaf with you. Mugwort. Mugwort is great for visions and dream work and unlocking the subconscious. This is definitely good for some of us who genuinely feel like, what the F is happening? Why am I still going through this? Or I keep saying these repeating numbers. Like, I don't know what all this means. And maybe you really do. You need some help with that. Mugwort is good. I'll drink it as a tea. It is insanely bitter, but I drink it as medicine, if that makes sense. Sometimes you got to take the bitter. I add honey to it. It is disgustingly bitter, but you can mix it with something else if it helps. But like I said, I drink it as medicine. So You can also burn it. I like to burn mugwort, and I just kind of breathe in the smoke, and I can also have the same effects. Lavender, my favorite, calming during the transitions. So when you're going through all this shifting and you are aware there is something happening, if it's something I've mentioned as far as the triggers and things like that, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, that might be me. Lavender might be your friend. Now, you can ingest it, obviously, but I'm one of those people, it's definitely a aromatherapy thing. So you could tell me something is with lavender, has it in it, but you're just getting the scent more than a taste. I like to use it as like for body oils or lotions or that sort of thing, or as a spray, or just as aromatherapy. So I'll burn it in my oil burner with lavender essential oil, like a base oil. So that's good as well. Um, lemon. Lemon is great for cutting cords and energetic refresh. Um, Sometimes we need that. I like that. I like to do a simmer pot with lemon. Um, Honestly, I would say citrus in general, but definitely lemon. Or if you want to do a cord cutting, lemon is good for that purpose. But I like, this is where my domestic magic comes into play. I'm going to do a simmer pot. Um, or you can get a glass of water with a cut piece of lemon and sliced lemon and have that in there. And that definitely, obviously, the mundane thing, it's refreshing. But also, if you speak the intention into the water with the lemon, there you go. Clear quartz that amplifies your current energy. It's good for awareness. So, for some of us doing that spiritual U turn situation, clear quartz can be your friend. I would say have it around you where you work, where you're spending the most time, bedside take, on your bedside or wherever, or just carry it on you. If you're in a position where you can wear it like in a piece of jewelry or something like that. That's great. Obsidian. Obsidian, also good for those spiritual U-turns and facing the shadow when timelines sort of loop. Okay. What I didn't have on that uh, printout, the printable, but because I like just the crystal, the herbs and the crystals, but a yellow candle, or yeah, yellow candle. The yellow color yellow aligns with like clarity and mental direction. So that's the only other thing I would mention. Um, if this is something you kind of want to explore a little bit more, I encourage you to maybe build, it doesn't have to be big and fancy, but like a timeline altar with kind of whatever you have on hand. So, paper, candles, stone, and your intentions. And especially if you feel like you're going through this, you can have a little altar space. It could just be on a plate, a tray, and you kind of spend time there. Um, do you already work? Does anybody here already work with any of this kind of stuff? Does this make sense to you? Um, like these sort of tools and these herbs, do you use it for clarity and all the other things I mentioned? Like when you're feeling stuck or unsure? I've shared for the membership here a couple different clarity spells. So this is something I actively do. So it's not like this, yeah, I really do that. Sometimes I'm feeling all the feels, I'm seeing the repetitive numbers. I need to sort out what's happening. And I like to sometimes do clarity type work to kind of help, clear things up and I can understand what is happening. And honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm getting more than one message from more than one source. Okay, so if you're working with a deity and then you start working with another one, and then you have your base deity you were working with, and then you're working with your ancestors, your spirit guides, add in some, house spirit energy, you're working with the fae. Um, yeah, you can have more than one message coming through. And sometimes, like I said, from a different source, especially if you called out to the whole team and said, "Hey, I need help." Yeah, you're getting a lot of help coming at you. So you're getting, 1111 over here. You're getting um a, an animal that you normally don't see just in your path all the time. People are saying phrases and things like that repetitively, like you heard something on, a social media app, and then someone you're at work is saying, and then another person, and you're like, what is happening right now? It's a bunch of messages coming through, and sometimes you just need a little bit of clarity. I'm suggesting creating like a small altar, and you don't have to keep it up forever. Or working with, like I said, some of the herbs and the crystals that I mentioned, to sort of help during this transition, um, to figure it all out. And these are things that I do, so I wanted to share it. So I want to talk about meeting the other you. And this was definitely inspired by enough movies of alternate realities and things like that. So is definitely the witchiest part. So there's a version of you in a timeline. I believe that, where things maybe feel easier, where you made the aligned choice, where you said yes to your intuition. I'd like to believe this is the timeline. I'm in the correct one right now, that I've made the switch to the correct one. But I don't think that she's a fantasy. I think she's you and she's me vibrating at a different frequency. Um, I like to go as far as to visualize her. Like, what does she wear? How does she carry herself? And what does she know that you've been resisting? And I don't think this is about pretending, it's about remembering the choices that bring you sort of home to yourself. So let me go a little bit more into this, and I'll give an example of me. So we've all had like pivotal points in our life where you knew it was either go this way or that way. Um, my daughter gives a great example of this. I'll never forget. She told me this years ago, and like we've talked about it a couple times afterwards. And I've used this as an example. So she's like away at college, and she's in Miami in college. And she's like, I remember I felt like she said it was a point where there was this one group asking her to hang out, and really appealing to her nerdy side. I think they were going to do like D&D and something like that, and it was another group, they were going to go out, they was going to be outside, they were going to and she had a choice to make in that moment, and she made her choice. And that choice affected her timeline, literally. She switched the timeline, because if whichever way she was going to go, everything was going to be different. um, so if in a situation like that, like if you ever wondered, well, what was that choice like? Um, and that's not a bad thing to wonder, by the way. Prime example, if you were to get married and you always wondered, well, what would have happened if you had reservations? So these are inside thoughts. You don't have to share this with anybody, but what could it have been? Um, Especially if you kind of regret it a little bit. And I mean, sometimes we don't want to admit that to others, and you don't have to. I'm just saying to yourself, or vice versa. What would have happened if you had said no, if you had stayed, and that sort of thing? It's not a negative thing, especially if you've done enough introspection and you kind of just wanted to see that version of yourself. Here's the thing, it's not about trying to be her and go back to her. If you feel like that would have been the better decision, you can get aligned and get on that frequency and change your timeline, is what I'm saying. No, you can't go back to the younger person. No, you can't go back to the girl or whenever, because we're not talking time travel. I'm talking about what you think you may have missed, or that life, that frequency, that energy, because it's all about how you feel. You can bring that into the now. You can switch your timeline and connect with the energy of it. So what did you think? That's why I'm asking you to ask these questions. Like, who is that version of you in this other timeline? And you can kind of get there. I like to think of it kind of like like braiding these timelines. So think of how you braid, right? So you know how they overlap when you're braiding, the hair overlap. Well, that's the point. uh, that's what I'm talking about. Like you can overlap, and then you can, weave that into your life now, and then alter your current timeline. This is getting really woo, and I hope you can stay with me. Um, this is coming from somebody who did a quantum leap spell during the leap year that proved wonderfully successful for me. Um, it's possible. So I know I sound very woo, but it's really possible to do this. And honestly, you don't really need a lot of tools to do this. I gave some ideas of correspondences and things like that because I mean, I'm one of the people I like to have the things to kind of help focus me. And let's use the things, the natural things like herbs and crystals to help kind of direct the energy. Um, but ultimately, you don't need a lot of tools to do all this, by the way, just so you know. You can just direct your mind to do it. If anything resonated with you today, just let it settle in. Let it settle in. Timeline shifts aren't always that dramatic, by the way. There are subtle movements of the soul. It's not always this big thing in life altering thing because everybody doesn't experience it like that or don't have those types of experiences. But you can flow with them or you can fight them. Have you seen somebody fight a timeline shift? That's but that invitation is always about choosing yourself. So I have thought. You know what that looks like? Relationships, not necessarily just romantic, but relationships, whether it's through an employer, a friend that you should have been done with. Those people, they were for a season, and you know deep down you should have shifted from that, and you didn't. And you keep them around, and you're miserable in their company. You're miserable at work. You're miserable. Let's say if you knew you should have sold your business, you should have gotten out of that business a long time ago. It no longer fuels you. It feels like pressure now. You don't get anything from out of it, and you could have pivoted, but you didn't. You didn't make that choice. Um, and yes, in relationships, romantic relationships, you knew it should have been done. You knew you should have let that go, and you didn't. And that's what fighting it when you know intuitively it should have been done. Um, I mean, we all know it can be corrected. You can end it. A lot of us have this notion that time makes it impossible because you've done something for so long. You've been with this person and you don't want to give it up. The career path, the business, the person, the friendship, the city, the house. You know what I mean? You don't want to give it up um, because you feel like you've invested the time. And for that, I'll just say we're talking timelines, and it's all relative. It's all like, this is your life. Why are you valuing time more than you're valuing your feelings, how you feel about it, your emotional state, your mental state, your spirituality? Why are you valuing a man-made construct more than you? Choose you. So your power isn't in controlling the shift though. It's in how you respond. That's the point. It's in how you respond. Are you fighting? Are you leaning into it? And leaning into it is being aware that the shift is taking place, even with the subtle things, and doing the other magical work, doing the spells, the rituals, to facilitate the transition into the new timeline. So you can set intentions. Maybe today or tonight. You can rearrange something small. Like I said, move furniture around in your life, things like that. You can write down what you're walking away from also. An honorable mention I want to mention is the decluttering. I do this sort of shift for myself seasonally at certain points of the year, like in the spring cleaning, and I will donate clothing and other items to purge, so to speak, and also to make room for the things that I want in this version of me. So when I moved to Arizona, I only moved with our like we didn't move with any of our furniture. We kept like the beds and couple dressers. But ultimately, I didn't have a lot of items when I moved here, and including appliances like I washer, dryer, the dining table, shelves, all that sort like living room furniture. I had um yeah, anyway, moving on. So like stuff, we had lived in a very large house with like a formal living room and um family room and all that sort of stuff, so I had still stuff in storage from that to move to before we moved here. I didn't have any of that stuff when I came here, and I got rid of a lot of clothes, electronics, all sorts of stuff. And my whole point was I'm going to have what I want. I'm going to get the things that I want in that environment. I had lived in the East Coast, I lived in Florida. I had a more coastal vibe in my space, and that wasn't going to work here in Arizona for me. So I wanted to invite that shift, that version of me, because I knew I would be different here. I knew things would be different. My reality would be different. So that task of letting go, which by the way sounds easy, but it's really not. To let go of things that you coveted. I bought those things because I loved them and I wanted, and it made me feel a certain way in my home, and it was a goal to have certain items and artwork and things like that. And I was saying goodbye to that and introducing a new reality, a new timeline. And it was a major shift. I live in a totally different environment. The air quality is different. My visuals are different. Um, and I am different. And then there were other shifts that came once I was here, huge shifts in my reality. Um, but what I could control was my reaction to the shift. So selling off all my personal items was my way of controlling it and making room for something new. So going forward, I do that now. I will purge certain items. Um, Now, like I said, like during the spring, and sometimes out of gratitude, I'll do that in celebration right before Samhain comes. So keep it like Mabon and things like that. I'm keeping that in mind. Like, oh, I'm grateful and I want to share um, uh, um, with others. So I donate things or I give things away and things like that. But that's how you do that. That's what it looks like making like those small changes. Um, And then, of course, writing down what you're walking away from. I just kind of want to reiterate that a little bit. Um, Doing that journaling is wonderful, and you can include that into your scripting as well. It felt good to sell my house finally. It felt good to do that and know that another family would enjoy this space. I had wonderful years raising my family, although I may have dreamt that my children would have wanted this house. It's a better decision to let this new family enjoy it. They will take more out of it at this stage than any of my children would if they did this. So this is the better decision, and I am now living in my dream condo with, oceanfront views. I'm talking about scripting. This is how detailed you can go. This is how I do it. Um, it's simple to just do I am statements. I write a story where I'm putting the realism of what is and what will be. That's basically I'm penning it. and I'm believing the universe will respond to that. That's why I like to get into the story. Now, I'm one of those people, I love a good story. I like writing stories. So I will go very deep into it, just explaining, and I will explain the details of what the condo looks like. And I will explain how I feel walking in it, waking up, and I will just keep that thread in writing new scenes of my experience and my feelings about it. Um, so that's how you can literally write down what you're walking away from in the most I want to say productive, but that's not it. In the best way where the universe hears you and you're in a space of gratitude and you're in a space of alignment and you're open to the shift, you're open to the new possibilities. So even though maybe you don't have the condo yet overlooking the ocean view, that's the point. That's why you're writing it. That's why you're pinning it. Um, but even the smallest action can pull you into a new current. So let's say you want to be pulled into a new shift. You want that. You want that to happen. Scripting is a great way to do that, by the way, to kind of alter this, yeah, author your timeline shift. Yeah. So it's not about control per se. It's about bringing it on. So is anybody in the middle of a shift right now? I feel like I am, but and do you have any tools that you're using? Or are you feeling called to use a certain tool or herb or crystals where maybe that's not something I'm going to say comfortable, familiar with, but you're feeling called to use it more. At one point, that was mugwort for me. I hadn't used it because I didn't see a need. I felt good with everything else, and then I had started using. This is a couple years ago. Started using mugwort more often, and I'm like, whoa! This is actually working for me. And the reasons, like the shift in to work better with dream work, to work better with like visions and things like that. Yeah. Psychic connection, all that sort of stuff. Mugwort has proven to be really great for me, working with that. And clarity, again, that's something I like to use the yellow candle. I like to dress it with mugwort or lavender or a combination of both actually, and I burn that. So mind you, when you're burning it and you're dressing it with the oils and stuff like that, and you're using actual dried herbs, that is going to burn, so that's releasing also as well. So it's a whole thing. All right, so I'm gonna end it here. Don't forget to join my Discord. It's called Leap Taken Safe Place for Witches. That's non-committal. You just kind of pop in and you interact. But what I am going to be doing is I'm going to be hosting every first Saturday a little virtual get together. So you can choose to come on camera or not. I'm not forcing anybody. We already had a little one before a little pop-up thing, but it's like a virtual meet and greet. It's a standing thing where you can come every Saturday. And the whole point is to just have candid conversations with other people who are practitioners, witches, occultists, spiritualists, pagan. And to share so we can talk about spells, we can talk about rituals. And my intention is to do live demos. So as we're talking, maybe I'm working on my oils, which I need to build new oils because I have some old up here. I need to um, work on that. So I'll be, talking about correspondences and things like that, and my intention behind it, and all that sort of stuff. So, um, working on dressing candles or working on some other spell work, and I'm kind of just showing the details, the little things like that. So yeah, um, that sort of thing. So if you're interested, join that Discord. The link is definitely in the description. Um, Also, I have like I mentioned before, there's a free resource. So I want to start adding like free printables here and there for you guys to use to add to your book of shadows. So I sell my book of shadows, so you can take these pages and like you can glue them, just use glue stick or tape them on as well. So this is definitely good for any of the ones. You can use this if you have the Hoodoo Grimoire. You can definitely add this in there. If you have the Book of Shadows for the Love Witch, still fits. And also the Book of Shadows for the Hearth Witch, it definitely fits in there as well. And please stop ringing. Why are you not? Wasn't responding. Anyway, I keep my phone on vibrate, but Anyway, but let me know in the comments if you have any questions about that printable as well. But it's free, so you'll just use that link. It takes you to my website, leaptaken.com, and you'll be able to get it for free. But thank you for being here. And until next time, trust that shift, trust your shift, trust it, lean into it, lean into it, and control what you can. All right. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, hit the join button, join Leap Taken membership. And yeah, thanks again for watching. Bye.